Influencers suck. Well, the majority of them do. Today's video, however, is going to be about how some of them might actually be great figures. To start things out, I'm going to run you through a hypothetical scenario, something you might encounter as we approach the holiday season and you're sitting around the table with Gen X and Boomer family members. The conversation will go something like this. Oh, how is blank and blank? Aren't they doing that social media stuff? Oh, that's right, they're an influencer. And any other adult, Gen X, Boomer, older, around the table, the second they hear that word influencer, it's like something in their eyes changes. And there's this very almost mocking tone, like, oh, that's interesting. Something in the tone changes and they start to just kind of brain bomb every sort of like, oh, that's right, are they a TikTok dancer? Oh, they do dances, that's right. Oh, they must do those funny skits. You start to see this vast cultural disconnect as many older people don't have any conception of the way digital media is transitioning. I know I'm painting with a wide brush here, but for most people, when the term influencer comes to mind, an image of a Pharrell hat blonde woman taking a selfie doing a duck face is what comes to mind. And I will say, this is somewhat due. I'm of the belief a good majority of content on the internet from creators is not very good. A lot of it warrants a response like that. We can all think of toy channels and just horrendously obnoxious TikTok content which dominates the front of a lot of these websites. However, it is in this cacophony of shit that there are outliers. There are things happening that break the mold. It's the little silver linings. That is what today's video is about. However, we're going to start with the negative. There is something about looking at notifications, about an influx of 99 plus, when they can't even register how many people are liking your videos, dropping comments, telling you how great you are. There's something about that just deludes the fuck out of people. There are a lot of instances of massive creator god complexes forming where they just seem to just lose touch with all of reality. The perfect example of this is how every mainstream influencer seems to want to transition into a music career as soon as they get any attention, and the vast majority of it is, not good. Additionally, people like FouseyTube or Gabby Hanna, these creators who get an audience for one thing, pranks or story time commentary videos, immediately getting it in their head that they're also a poet, a dancer, a frickin' messiah figure. It's impossible to have this conversation without it burgeoning into mental health, but I would view the way social media acts as an apparatus of validation and delusion as a huge contributor. The thing I am getting at here is, in most instances, when creators try to spread their wings and say, I am not only good at social media, I'm good at everything, it tends to fall flat, and it tends to kind of really frickin' poke holes in the narrative I'm about to spin. Nonetheless, I will try to spin it. Here is why I think there are things happening online that warrant comparisons like Winston Churchill or frickin' Mozart. I'm gonna run you through a couple of industries, and we're gonna talk about how the internet has revolutionized and allowed things that worked one way to work even fucking better now, yet they still get sort of written off as influencers. To start off, let's talk about journalism, and more specifically sort of art and culture conjecture, more opinion-based ideas, because news reporting stuff, it's impossible not to get into politics when we talk about online journalists. It's a space I'm not particularly. What I'm more interested in is video essays. Think about some of the most successful video essays. Now, compare these to, New York Magazine, New York Times, frickin' Rolling Stone think pieces. These video essays, in terms of raw impressions, can vastly outmeasure the performance of the best cultural institutions. I think it's funny to bash video essayists. There's that one Native American meme. But I will say, in terms of actual cultural contribution and criticism or just ideas and theory, these things end up vastly outperforming these massive cultural institutions that once were the bulwarks of industry. Now, does this mean it's always necessarily better? No, but I think if we were to just survey all of the video essays, take out the very obvious, like Rick and Morty nihilism takes, we're gonna find stuff in there that is easily equivocable to the frickin' greatest critics and writers of prior times. Likewise, I made a video about this figure before, but Mr. Anthony Fantano and how single-handedly he has become the most fucking powerful music critic of an entire generation. It's impossible not to look at things like this and say, are these not the great people of today? With that, let's actually hop into one of the people we're going to talk about today, which is Quadeca. Now, Quadeca, if you are familiar with him, you likely think of a young kid impersonating rappers and kind of like, 20 different styles of rap. And he goes through and, it's a funny visual. He does a very good job. He's making up lyrics. If you're a fan of any of these rappers, you're like, wow, that's actually pretty accurate. And in that, my analysis of that is like, okay, this is a rap YouTuber. He's doing really compelling formats where you can just cram a bunch of references into one video. You're gonna automatically get thrown in front of every person who wants to get into hip hop, who's trying to kind of like get a gauge of styles, just also get in front of people who are just massive fans of the genre. And it would be one thing if that's all he ever did. He'd just be considered a YouTuber and an influencer, but the path for the vast majority of people who make these types of videos is that they also end up making music. Now, again, I will say a lot of it is bad. A lot of it is bad. It is very rare you get like a Joji Filthy Frank transition where someone can just so effortlessly switch lanes. But I will say, Quadeca's is happening. It's happening in front of us. We're witnessing a creator go from, funny YouTuber, kind of like showing that he's talented, but it's often like, more informative and interesting, to what I will honestly say is like very compelling, sonically interesting music. I don't know if a Fantano review's come out at this point. I'll throw it up on screen if it has, but the way I even formulated this video was looking at a stream react of Fantano to the new album, watching all of his fans swarm the chat and basically just, beg Fantano to be like, he keeps getting better, like, listen to this, it's worth listening to. And I feel like that friction, that like hesitancy to give a chance to the influencer is the crux of what this is about. As we sort of step even further in, it's impossible not to look at other fucking successful instances like Logan Paul and Prime. I made a video about this kid as well too. There was a point in 2017 where people thought Logan was fucking done. He was the laughing stock of the entire world, and him and his brother have managed to make what are very soon to be like billion-dollar empires off of their personal brands. And beyond that, they're, making products. They're entering industries and revitalizing things in a manner that is, again, a model that is only of this time. I could make a whole nother video about this, but the idea of CEO as the brand is something that comes out of the VaynerMedia, Gary Vaynerchuk ilk. But look at all of the top influencers and start to research the fact that they all have businesses. They're all aggressively targeting industries that haven't had the same internet refresh, and basically partnering with existing distributors in the space and saying, hey, I know I can refresh Nestle's imagery if I put, MrBeast on top of the chocolate. Which gets into the last person we're going to talk about, which is Jimmy Donaldson. Another person I have made a video about. Whatitis has a lot of videos. Go check them all out, guys. Jimmy Donaldson could very easily run for governor. He could very easily run for president. I say governor because I think as a political strategy-minded person, I would go for governor first. I would take over North Carolina. He's already basically become the Willy Wonka of his town, gotten jobs for everybody in the area, building massive like factories and warehouses. There's some interviews where he talks about how he wants it all to be, in his home. Now, imagine if he could do the scale of like the Save the Trees or Save the Whales. There's a couple campaigns. I'm sorry, I don't remember them correctly. But imagine if he could do those scales of things, just only targeting his local area's problems, and just mobilize what is effectively like the largest fan base online to just start fucking solving things. I think that is the beauty of the tree campaign is, and honestly, a lot of how Elon Musk brands himself is, I'm going to come in from left field and basically just cut through the bureaucracy. Inevitably, they end up kind of entrenching themselves in it, which is kind of the idea of, he'll end up in politics. He's hesitant about it because he doesn't want to have to play the political game. But what I'm getting at is it is unbelievably realistic in our lifetime that a MrBeast figure will run for president. Arguably, Trump and Kanye kind of already are that, but grounding it back in the influencer, we still hold influencer as this dirty word, to the point where even like there's kind of inside of the creator community, they don't like that word. They want to be called creators, which, apologies if this video is using the wrong nomenclature, but I'm talking about a very real thing here, that people don't seem to realize how quickly media is changing and how realistic it is that all of these figures, although easily kind of like dismissed as like YouTube rapper, frickin' like exploiting the algorithm for views type people, at the same time, these are also the public figures emerging and influencing entire generations. It's highly likely if a lot of the great people of the past were around today, what would they be doing? Would they be ignoring the most powerful like media mimetic dissemination tool in existence? Or would they be fucking making vlog channels? Would they be, being figures like AOC and mobilizing controversy to just fucking throw themselves in front of hundreds of millions of people? Ask yourselves that, and, then you start to see a narrative emerge for the influencer where, it's the plat du jour, it's the thing of the day. At the same time, it is also where we are going to see many of our great figures emerge from. Now, this is an idea that warrants another video, which I think my two critiques of myself here are the two things I don't see creators like this fully doing. And I'll talk about both of them really quickly, but in another video, we'll really dig into them. Number one, think in terms of legacy. For those who are familiar with some of the more scandalous parts of the internet, political parts of the internet, there is a set of people who believe we should have a monarchy instead of democracy. One of the ideas that they use to justify this is the idea of life works, and how during monarchies there would be projects that would span 80 years, and it was a monarch's goal to make sure that that super intense like Colosseum got done within their lifetime, so it could be known as, the Blair What It Is Coliseum. This is his contribution to the empire. Nowadays in politics, it is considerably harder to imagine, doing projects that last longer than 2 years because you're already thinking about election cycles. Now, while there's a lot of issues with this mindset, namely that, democracy and the 4-year term isn't the only thing that exists in the world, how this translates into what I'm talking about with creators is that the algorithm that a lot of these people gained their followings through does not encourage or facilitate long-term thinking. It's a lot more about quick viral schemes, which I think is part of the reason this is a different type of cultural force and why it could be potentially more powerful than certain long-term things. But at the same time, that long-term thinking is what is ultimately going to distinguish many of these creators from, the ones who are here for 5 years and the ones who are here for 50. Thinking in terms of, what is the most obscenely fucking large thing I could work towards? What is the musical masterpiece that's going to define Quadeca when he reinvents freaking sampling and, genres of production? Or when Jimmy Donaldson fucking makes the Coliseum that's in North Carolina? What are the long-term things to focus on, which just inherently the internet is not good at? It's fucking instantaneous algorithms, stay trending, blah, blah, blah. Number two is physicality or locality. The internet has kind of created an idea that everything can happen everywhere all at once, and it doesn't actually matter to be physically grounded in a location. Now, this is true. I think this is a beautiful thing about the internet. I think it's amazing that so many people all over the world no longer need to be in a specific place to do great things. They can contribute solely through the internet. However, physicality matters. History of places and just concentrations of population and capital and culture matter. And that is one of the things I don't see a lot of the influencer space do, is gather in places and make meaningful change inside of actual localities and inside of actual physical gathering places. Like, it also has to do with community. I think certain creators try to build this on their own. The Clout House model is something we could talk about endlessly, and Los Angeles is sort of an influencer wasteland is a whole nother topic, but I think in this next video, I'll talk about why it's so important that this happens in cities and we get some of these same cultural happenings that were happening throughout New York over the past 60 years, why it's important for the people who want to last to go to these places. All things considered, this was a bit of a clickbait video, but I do want to say, I realistically think there are creators around nowadays who are going to become figures like Churchill, figures like Mozart. I think it'll happen. As crazy as I sound, it is happening in front of our very eyes, and I will say the majority of it is not that, but some of it is going to last. It is what it is. Have a great Thanksgiving and holiday season, you American What It Is viewers. The rest of you, nothing.